Kurt Billups is here in the house.
What's everybody? Listen, you already know it's your boy Kurt Billups. It is your Inspiration Health, sponsored by Mercy Health. We got my good friend Dr. Nav Kang in the house. We got Carl B in the house, and Nikki B is in the house. It's getting ready to go down. Let's get it done.
Dr. Nav Kang, he's the usher. He's gonna bring people in. Kurt's the preacher. Carl will lead praise and worship.
Nikki B, you want water? Are you good?
No tea if they got some. Hot tea. I'll take it. I'm doing the healthy.
This is going to be so much fun.
When he looks back at it later.
Right.
Carl, my newest adventure, I am making homemade pastas now.
So when can
I'm going to send you
when
Ania
can we come over?
some homemade pasta, like some.
Anything you make, I'm there.
Yeah, so I'm making like homemade noodles.
That can't be easy. Like how many?
It's not hard, and it
really?
has 3 ingredients.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
She's.
So
I've been
tell me
making
how
my
that
homemade
works.
dressings.
Because I always wanted to try it, but I
That'd be
never
a
actually
nice
looked it up.
side
I just
hustle.
assume that it's got to be so many steps, and it's so much easier to just buy it at the store.
Flour, you
Yeah.
make it look like a volcano, drop the eggs into it.
That's it.
That
And
is
then what do you do?
it.
Do you bake it like that, or?
No, you roll it out.
Uh-huh.
Well, I do the KitchenAid, or you can roll it, old school way.
Right.
Boil the water, drop it in there, and it turns into the noodle.
Really?
It takes 3 minutes.
Oh.
And you only have 3 ingredients.
Yeah, we have the KitchenAid. Like you gotta
It's
buy
like-
the attachment to it.
So
that
Macy's
does...
has it on sale right now.
Okay.
Attachments. You can make fettuccine, angel pasta, regular noodles. Yeah.
You just can buy
This is
whichever
a new
attachment
cooking
that you
device.
want.
Just making my own pasta.
Yeah.
Yep. I was telling him it's
I've heard of that. You can
Yes.
you can make almost make anything out of
You
pasta.
can make
String
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you
But
can
I mean,
string it out.
You
Yeah.
volcano your flour, drop the eggs in the middle, and you just keep kneading the flour
Yeah.
into the eggs. And that's it. That's what
I
literally
just always
turns it
figured it
into
was so
sticky.
much more difficult than that. Like it would take you like all
No.
day or
Technology,
something.
man.
Yeah.
And you can throw in like
Moving.
spinach, like if you want the
Sure.
green pot.
Yeah.
Just throw that in there.
Carl B. Yes, sir.
That's cool. Okay.
We up.
Yeah.
We up.
I
We
just
ready.
Turned you up.
Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Say something else, Kurt. Just talk like you normally do. Hey, Kurt, how you doing, man?
That was a really good Kurt impersonation. That was really,
I'm on
that
Your
was
Inspiration
actually
Health.
really good. You're tuned in to Your Inspiration Health, sponsored by our healthcare partners, Mercy Health. This is Carl B. Huh?
That was good.
That was pretty good.
Are you sure you don't want to spin with us?
Switch! No, I got so much to do. I really do.
Whatever. You never want to hang with us.
And remember, I got some liners for you.
Oh yes, I'll be
Okay.
here afterwards. Yes. All right, hey everyone, this is Nikki Bean and my boy Kurt B.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Kurt Billups.
Yes, you are tuning in Your Inspiration Health, sponsored by Mercy Health, and we are so happy to once again have Dr. Nav Kang.
Yes.
He is the operations director for the behavioral health with Mercy Health, and we
Good morning, everybody.
Yes.
Well, listen. So Dr. Kane is blessed us with his presence on more than one occasion,
Yes.
and I've been, in a few events with him. And I said this morning when we walked in, it's always a treat to have Dr. Kane in the house because a lot of times we talk about health and wellness. We talk about it strictly from a physical perspective. And health and wellness is really the complete person, the whole person.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is where he, where this is his space all day long. And he has helped me. I've called him with questions, and he's a resource, man. So we're honored to have you in the building.
You're too
today.
kind, though. I mean,
Nah,
it's
we're
an
always
awesome opportunity to be here. I really
We were
appreciate
having
it.
a great conversation, and I kind of want to pick up in the middle where we were about the wellness piece to
Sure,
it,
yeah.
to behavioral health. So tell us just a little bit about what you were saying, and
Yeah, I think when we're talking about wellness, it's sometimes it's such a vague concept. People don't understand, like, how am I supposed to understand it, but then more importantly, do something with it. And so what we were talking about sitting here is if we can structure this idea of wellness into some core buckets, then it's easier for people to look at their life, their experience, and then kind of step back and say, okay, where do I feel like I'm well, or I have achieved wellness, or I can work to sustain wellness, versus where am I not so well, and where do I need to start putting some more intentional focus, right? Because otherwise you end up taking a scattershot approach. You don't know if you're actually achieving a goal that you might have set out for yourself, and then suddenly it's like 3 months later and I haven't really gotten anywhere.
Right.
And then it comes to New Year's and we're like, all right, I'm going to set a New Year's resolution. But again, I don't really know where it fits into my overall wellness picture. Does it even make sense for me? And then guess what? 60 days later, it's first week of March, and I'm not doing that thing
You haven't
anymore,
done that thing.
right? And all this time passes by without us actually achieving anything because it's just not structured enough in our mind. So what we were talking about before we turned on the camera and everything else is some primary areas of wellness that people can look at for themselves. Kurt, to your point, I think sometimes we think of it just in that physical realm. So that is definitely one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So physical wellness, biological wellness, whatever. So a lot of times we look at diet, exercise,
Mm-hmm.
our weight, medication, if we're taking it, all that kind of stuff that fits underneath there. That's great. But there's so many other areas of wellness that we need to attend to, and they all interface with each other, right? So if you don't take care of the other 3 areas, then guess what? It doesn't matter how much effort we put into that physical or biological wellness because we're missing so much more of the picture, right?
Yeah.
So like what we were talking about here is mental wellness, right? So mental wellness, mental health, mental illness, people throw these terms around a lot. We can dive into them if we want to, but just generally speaking, where's our mindset, where's our attitude? I think you guys talked recently about attitude, and
Right.
so, that is a component of overall wellness. Spiritual wellness, again, do I feel like that part of me is fulfilled? Do I have a connection to, whatever it might be for me, my family, my culture? Is it a higher power? Is it God? Is it this? Is it a church community? Is it something else? But where is my spiritual wellness? Or is that something I just totally ignore? I don't even think about it, right?
Yeah.
That's huge. I've been reading a book, it's called Made to Crave, and it talks about cravings, basically, but she talks about it on a spiritual level.
Okay.
But basically how when you are not where you need to be spiritually, we come up with all these cravings for other things. Like we are just completely at a loss, which is kind of how I felt. And actually somebody from Mercy recommended the book to me.
Okay.
But she was just saying that, if you're not walking where you're supposed to be spiritually, that you find yourself in these other places. And that's how, it related more so to food cravings, but other things. Like we try to find ways to satisfy, the missing pieces.
Well, so it might relate to food cravings because, again, we oftentimes look at this like physical wellness kind of thing, but if you take a step back and you think there's a void or there's a vacuum or it's just something is unfilled, then guess what? Something's got to fill that.
Something will fill it.
Right?
Yeah.
We talked about that this morning.
Nature
we
doesn't
did.
really like
We
a
did.
vacuum, so it gets filled in with something. The last of the 4 areas, so we talked about biological or physical, we talked about mental, we talked about spiritual. The last one then is social. And again, all of these things interface with each other. They all relate to each other, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
when
big,
it comes to social wellness, or maybe the opposite of it, could be thought of as like loneliness or disconnection.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing nowadays because we live in this hyper-connected age. We got we're live streaming right now.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
making
Video,
a
we're
video
recording,
right now.
right.
I got my phone in my pocket.
And
We
we're
got
on the air,
screens
right? We're
everywhere.
creating a video right for the
And
air.
we're in this hyper-connected age where it's so easy to reach out to each other and theoretically connect with other people.
Right.
But the level of loneliness in our society has never been higher, right? There's all kinds of literature in this space about how disconnected we are in this hyper-connected age.
And how much of that do you believe has to do with because we're so outwardly focused right now? Like there's so much, when I hear people talk about life in general, so much of it has to do with everything else going on outside of them. I rarely hear people talk about what they're doing to satisfy this life, to make this life better, to understand this life more.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think we talk about this idea of genuine connection versus maybe superficial connection.
Yeah.
Last time I was here, we talked a little bit about vulnerability. I think that relates to the whole idea as well.
Yeah.
And how genuine or how real are we being with other people versus what's the facade that we're putting up,
Right?
which
Yeah.
ultimately makes us not feel connected to each other. And
Right.
when we're trolling through Facebook, if everyone's doing the same thing, we're all putting up this image of everything's going great and whatever,
Yeah.
then it's not real. It's not a real picture of other people. You
Yeah.
have an unrealistic picture of yourself.
You paint what
You
you
do
want
that over
people to
time,
see,
5-10 years, and then suddenly everyone's disconnected from each other. And
Wow.
that can influence
Wow.
our physical wellness. There's great research around all of this. It can influence our physical wellness. Obviously on the spiritual side, very concretely, if you're not going to church, you're spiritually unfulfilled. And then there's a social piece to that, obviously. We all recognize that. And then suddenly you have multiple areas of wellness that are getting negatively affected all at the same time. Just by like a couple of what we think are small decisions.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. So no, what?
Yeah, that just
What do you think?
that just hit for me.
So
Like
let
the
me-
whole spiritual side.
Yeah, but we got
And then we end up making this goal, like, all right, I'm going to exercise every day. And then you're like, okay, that's good, but what's that going to do for you at the end of the day
Yeah.
if you don't do all this other stuff too,
Right.
right? Or if you don't
Yep.
think about this other stuff at all.
So you got to be paying attention to all of these dynamics, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the person listening in is saying, I hear you guys, and then all the mental and the physical and the spiritual and the social. But how do I get there?
I was just going to say, how
Dr.
do they
Kang,
do that?
how do I
Yeah.
get there?
Sure. Yeah, it's like anything else, right? So, let's say you talk to somebody who is trying to quit smoking, right?
Okay.
There are people who try to do it cold turkey, like right away.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who try to do it gradually over time. I gotta be honest with you, as a behaviorist, like I just think that we can do everything that we can do cold turkey, we can do gradually. It just ends up being a little easier for us to do it gradually.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
I like
just the
that.
same idea. Start small.
I like
Just
that.
choose a place that makes the most sense for you. What we're talking about here is just be aware that there's more than one area of wellness, right? It's not just about like the number on the scale or how much you can lift or whatever it is or how many calories you're intaking in a day. There's other areas of wellness. When you kind of do a self-assessment about where am I on these, then which one kind of bubbles to the top? What's the priority? And then just start small in that space, right? Like it's the same idea of
Small
like
steps,
in
yeah.
January, New Year's, people set sometimes pretty specific goals for themselves about like here's how I'm going to change my diet or here's how I'm going to change my exercise kind of thing, and we go all in.
Right.
Usually.
Right.
No
doubt.
Right.
Until February 1st.
It's typically, yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah.
It's typically not like a realistic goal, and maybe we don't prepare ourselves like, if I'm gonna go exercise every day, how am I gonna do that? Like, when is that gonna happen? Something else in my schedule is probably got to give because I'm not gonna add a 25th hour to the day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where am I gonna do it? Right. Is there anybody else that's gonna be there as part of it?
Yeah.
There's a social piece to that.
Mhm.
Or if I have other responsibilities, like who's gonna take care of my kids?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we don't set ourselves up to sustain these kinds of things. And so starting small can be a way to like test the ideas.
Yeah.
Is this working? Is this making sense? It's like people who haven't been going to church for a while will say, I'm going to start going every Sunday. Well, that might not be realistic because you've been doing something else on your Sundays that is going to get impacted by that. Right?
Right. No, I
And we have to attend to that. Instead, we just think like, I'm going to do this really good thing and whatever I was doing before is bad, and so it'll be fine to get rid of it. But that's not realistic because we've been doing that other thing for a while. We have some momentum with that.
Yeah.
Right.
Go. Yeah. No.
I was just gonna chime in on about the New Year's resolutions because I don't believe in them.
Okay.
They fit some people,
Uh-huh.
but I found that I'm 38 now, and over the years I've done it. I don't even think I make it to January 15th.
Sure.
Pretty
Right.
much sticking to it. But I'm with you on that. I think it was almost beating myself up though,
Yeah.
because then I would get to February 1st and it's crap. I didn't lose the 10 pounds. I
Right.
actually gained 5 pounds.
Sure,
right.
Or
Yeah.
I said I was going to save this amount of money, and I haven't touched anything
Right.
because that really was not attainable for
Sure.
me.
Yeah.
So what I've done in my life now, so I wake up in the mornings, I actually pray, and I do a little bit of reading, whether it's in a book or whether it's usually a scripture out of the Leadership Bible. But on top of that, I do 7
Great.
days of goals. So my 7 days is what can happen this week. I go on my gym's website. I pick out the days that I know good and well I definitely can go. And it's mapped in with my son. So I know a lot of us use your calendar,
Mhm.
and then some people like to write it out. I like to write it out,
Sure.
but also my work calendar is attached, so I need it another way.
Yeah.
So
Right.
without stressing myself. So what I do is I print my calendar out, because it prints off my work calendar and my life calendar, and I
Good
go
idea.
through there and I
Yeah.
highlight.
Right.
So here is my Mary Kay private business that goes in pink, blue goes in for my son. So everything is in between there. So that way I was de-stressing myself for 7 days. And within those daily goals, at the beginning of the day, I set up my top 5 things that I have to do today. Even if it's, make sure I take out the ground turkey.
Right.
It's, those small things that I know I can obtain. And at the
Because
end
then
of
guess what? You get to time to making dinner and that thing is still frozen.
Exactly.
And then you're ordering a pizza.
Yep.
Right,
So we've
You're
lost
going through
so-
a drive-through
yeah.
somewhere or
Yep.
whatever it is.
So I got a couple things that
I
come.
mean, it's a great concrete example, right? If it's not
Mhm.
priority, it's not going to happen. Whatever
Nope.
the thing is,
Yep.
right?
If it's not priority, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Whatever
But
the
if you have
thing
too
is.
many priorities, then none of them's going to happen.
Nothing
never
happens
happen
because you're
anyway.
all over the place. Like I always say, my life is kind of almost like a hurricane. It's grab, go, run, flip. Something always changes. So just setting up those couple of days, and it's like, okay, I know I can do this.
So
This
how?
happened.
So
Yeah.
as a behavioralist, right? How important is goal setting? How important is establishing some sort of structure?
Well, no, absolutely. That's what we're talking about right
To-
now.
to mental health.
So both things here, right? One is the establishment of priorities lets you actually get anything done, right? So in business or in healthcare, it's the same kind of idea that if it's not measured, then it doesn't change or it doesn't get done, right?
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing with humans in general. Whatever we track ends up changing, right? So when we track our calories, just by simply tracking them, we change. Now, some people want to eat more calories, like Kurt probably wants to eat more calories to get bulked up or whatever, right?
Yeah, no, it's true.
Other people might want to eat less calories, so whichever way you end up wanting it to go, without even making any other change other than starting to track it, you end up starting to make a change on it. So if you're tracking your macros probably, then you're going to end up changing exactly how much protein, fat, carbs you end up taking in, just by tracking.
Just tracking,
right?
Yeah.
So if you end up wanting to go and pray every day, if you track it some way, whether it's on a calendar or you have a reflection that follows praying or reading the Bible every day or whatever it is, then you're tracking that. If you end up not tracking it, a week passes, a month, 2 months. Hey, guess what? I set this goal, but it wasn't really a goal because I didn't set myself up to actually do it.
Yeah.
Right?
I get it.
And so the structure piece goes right with it. That was your second question, is how important is the structure? The structure of the goal is one thing. The structure of your life, or understanding where your priorities fits in, again, just sets the foundation of whether you can do them or not, right? So when we met with President and Mrs. Obama last year, they talked to us about the same kind of thing, right? You're going to have so many priorities in an active or busy life that you'll be consumed by all of this stuff if you don't set up what your priorities are. And they gave us the same kind of examples on how they use a calendar. Now, they got people to help them, obviously, with that kind of thing, but it's the same underlying
It's the same
idea,
one, right?
Is you plan your schedule out as far as you need to put here's this thing that's happening in 6 months, and I'm going to make sure that time is protected so it doesn't get taken away. That could be vacation. I mean, before you came in, Nikki and I were talking about vacation this summer.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I don't want to be spending too much money on a flight like we all wouldn't want to. So she's planning ahead and going to carve that out so that doesn't impact her overall wellness by paying 3 times as much as she could for a flight.
And because of that, those financial stressors that could come paying at top premium price, that is
all part of mental wellness.
It's part of the mental piece, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's fascinating when you really start to peel it back and look at how all this stuff ties in together. Like you said, there's some groups that may put social over spiritual, physical, mental. Okay. End of the day, to be a complete being, right? To function as a complete being, you gotta have it all.
You gotta have it all. You gotta attend to it all.
And you gotta attend to it all.
Whether you think one's more important than the other or whatever, guess what? They all interact with each other, and as a human being, all this stuff is happening whether you want to attend to it or
it's
not.
gonna happen. Life's
It's gonna
happening.
happen
We talked about that
anyway,
this morning, right? It's gonna happen.
Yep.
And what we need to do, what's best for us, is to prepare ourselves for what's happening and have systems in place to deal with things as they arise. So you are listening to Your Inspiration Health, sponsored by our healthcare partners at Mercy Health. We are here with Dr. Nav Kang. It is always a pleasure to be in his presence and to listen in on him. We're talking about just wellness. But we're talking about it from from the aspect of the whole being, right? The whole person. And one of the things, and I know we want to get into some other stuff, because you got a lot going on. Right. He's got a lot going on. But I do want to talk about attitude, right? We talked about attitude when we came off, and I want to ask you this. When we look at, I'll call it poor attitude for lack of a better term. When we look at poor attitude or bad attitude, what are some of the biological health consequences and psychological health consequences to that, if there are any?
Sure, yeah.
Wow.
So, I think, again, this goes back to the interaction between the different areas of wellness that we're talking about, right? So if we have a negative mindset, if we have a negative attitude, a lot of things happen.